think about it. Okay. Well, let me just go through it. I've learned by reading this, lifting the layers. It takes place in the English countryside, and the little ghost is on a path, and this path is in the midst of strawberry fields and cherry trees, and the moon is out, and it's spring, and it's night. It's calm, and young maidens are coming down the path. And she notices that as they come close to her on this warm night, they start shivering, and they're frightened. And she says, "Fear not, O maidens," shivering, and now she just is loving them, shivering as bunches of the dew-drenched leaves in the calm moonlight. They're beautiful to her, as beautiful as dew-drenched leaves in the calm moonlight. So she's putting them at ease, right? It's okay. It is the cold sends quivering my voice, a little nightingale that grieves. I'm not scary. I'm a little sad nightingale. Now time beats not. Now she's explaining to them where she is. Time beats not, and dead love is forgotten. The spirit too is dead and dank and rotten. She's sharing herself with him. And I forget the moment when I ran between my lover and the sordid man, blinded, blinded with terror. And at this point, I forgot it, right? I forget that moment, but actually right now, it's coming back to me. Blinded with terror that I lose his heart.
Lest I lose.
Sorry, lest I lose my heart. I kept the light.
Lest
I lose his heart.
Well, also, may I pause real quick there?
Yeah.
One of the things that jumped at me just as you were saying it,
yes,
is that sordid man has two implications.
I know.
Right?
Yes.
And I love this. I just noticed it just now. Sordid and sordid.
I know. As a matter of fact. But the fact is, the sordid man, here's one of the problems for me. The sordid man is not the villain. There was a duel.
Right.
The sordid man died.
Yes.
Right.
Well, the sordid man is the person who dueled with her love.
Yes. But he's the one who died.
Yes.
Anyway, so that was actually, I'm so glad you mentioned about sordid, because every time I go, I have to gesture sword, or I need to say, we have to tell them that, there was a duel. That's what the sword is.
Right. Well, I do think it would be great to read that introduction.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Which she gives us.
Okay.
Who Deborah Churchill was.
Yes.
Etc.
Okay, great. Okay, and then she goes, so to lest his heart, and then the sordid man dropped, and I saw depart, and love. So that moment, love, and my lover, and my life. For me, that's the moment. I'm just talking to you out anyway. Is it's all about that moment right there.
Yes.
That she lost love.
Yes.
I saw depart love, and my lover, and my life. He fled. Are we hearing this? This person that I was passionate about and ran in to save, he fled. And I was strung and hung upon the tree. So in this, she's telling the story. It is so cold now that my heart is dead and drops through time. Night is too dark to see him still. She's in that space of grieving. Cut to, but it is spring. And this portion, I don't even have to read, except that it is so much fun. I will read it with you because it's so fun. But it is spring. Now she's in rapture, right? Upon the fruit boughs of your lips, young maids, the dew like India's. And let's talk about how big India is. Massive. India's splendor drips. India's, that splendor, it's inconceivable how much there is. It's on your lips, it's in the dew, right here. India's splendor. She does this beautiful thing where she gets in real small with something so specific as dew on lips, and blows it out to India, that size. And then they're so, and now you pass by among the strawberry beds and pluck, and I love pass. It's subtle, it's soft, it's gentle, but pluck, electric. Take it for yourself. Pluck the berries, cooled. These are strawberries. Imagine just filled, strawberries everywhere. Pluck them. The berries cooled by the moonlight, silver moonlight, silver, a jewel itself. It's not the word I'm looking for, but it's precious metal.
Yeah.
And when it's shiny, the light that comes off of it, right? So cooled. Now she's been cold, but cooled is a good thing. Cooled is beautiful. Cooled by the silver moon. Pluck boughs of cherries. And now this is so fun for me because I'm like, what is it? It took me a while to figure out this phrase. That seem the lovely, lucent coral bough. What is she talking about? Why are we talking about coral here? And then, because she's now taking us into the ocean. She's taking us into that beautiful water where the coral is, the reefs. You're seeing it. That seam, and I was kind of bouncing past that seam, and then I finally went, oh no, the seam is important. That seam, the lovely, lucent coral bough from streams. From streams of starry milk. Your stuff, when I read it, I went, oh wait, that's the painting. Oh, that's right, the streams of starry milk. And it's wild to me that you didn't know that. Those branches grow. Those corally cherry branches grow, and I love branches and bunches. That Cassiopeia, the queen, in the heavens, in the stars, sitting on a throne in the stars, feeds with her faint light like Ethiopia, ever jeweled bright. And aside from this beautiful word connection, slightly rhyming thing happening there.
Yeah.
It's Ethiopia, like India. You know, she references an exotic, faraway country, both of them, but she talks about their splendor, right? Jeweled. And then she's out. She's in the cosmos, she's in the water and the oceans, and then she comes right down to the specific cherries. Comes in close. those lovely cherries do enclose deep in their sweet hearts the silver snows. And she references silver again, but this time it snows. And it's not, it's that you're seeing the snow falling. She doesn't say snow.
Right.
The snows. And it's gorgeous. And I marveled so much over that. Just wanted to thank her. I went, thank you for, putting the snows in the cherry. Because of course, in terms of the process of growing, the cold is important. Frost is important. The seasons are important for the gestation and the growing of the plant. So literally it's important. They are there. The history of the snows are there in the cherries. But she's like turning it into a little crystal ball where you're seeing the snows in there. And then the same thing with the small budding flowers. And they're also small. The small budding delicate flowers upon the trees are filled. And then suddenly she's blown them up because they're filled. They're not big enough to be filled, right? But these are filled with sweetness. And sweetness is innocent and it's pure and it's delicious. Like the bags of bees. So this is all this gorgeous joie de vivre of life on earth in the country, but not only in the country, the whole of the experience of living. And she's sharing that with the maidens. She wants them to relish it the way I do and did, right? Maybe I should just say do, because she's very current there, very present.
Yeah.
And then she says, forget my fate. And by the way, I see this all as being incredibly loving. She's loving life, she's loving them, she's loving them in life, right? And then she says a very loving thing again, ends with, forget my fate. Don't spend any time with my tragic end. Don't spend any time with death. Don't. Live. You're in it. Live only. And I thought also, she's about 30. In fact, she is 30 according to the time she was born and when she died. There's a lot of beautiful living happening. And I've heard people say something to the effect of how important it is the way you die. And I just think it is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You're going to die. It doesn't matter how you die. It's all that life that you lived. And then you leave.
Right.
And everyone has a different way, and some are, we can go into why. But that's that's a period at the end of the sentence.
Right.
Or the last word of the essay, or the novel, or the tomes, right?
Or dot dot dot.
Or dot dot dot. Or dot dot dot. Right?
As Joyce.
Yes. So, love. This is a love poem right here. And it's a love poem to the maidens. And it's, it's directed to the maidens. She says, forget my fate. I do not want my experience to contaminate your life. But I, a moonlight ghost, creep. You pass, I creep down the strawberry paths and seek the lost world. You are busy doing life. I look for the lost world, the apothecary at the fair. And I'm so grateful that she capitalized the F because we know it's not the local farmer's market.
Right.
So, apothecary, and you can, again, if you disagree, jump in or have a different thought. But I interpret that as God. in existence, all of existence. Okay, so now I've been using sort of a low voice because it's kind of tired, but as I was doing this, I talked to her in the nightingale voice. The night, my voice, a little nightingale that grieves. So she's in her youth here. Lightness, and I keep it going through all of this, and forget my fate. But I, a moonlight ghost, same thing, same voice, creep down. And then at Deborah, because it begins with I, a moonlight ghost, and then it becomes I, Deborah. And this is Deborah, the human, the tied to the earth, right? Here she's an apparition. She's a moonlight ghost. It's very beautiful. She's ethereal. And here she's not, right? And my long cloak of brown. By the way, that made me so happy when I read it. When I was screaming, I went, oh my gosh. Yeah, I didn't read it the first time. I didn't comprehend it the first time, but that's her. That brown is her in the grave, right?
In the earth.
The earth,
yeah.
right? And my long cloak of brown. How gorgeous is that? Like the small nightingale. And this, you're going to help me with this. Like the small nightingale that dances down the cherried boughs. Got it? Got that image? Creep to the doctor's bare booth. The apothecary. The doctor's, right? Same thing. The doctor's bare booth at the fair. Nothing's there. Cold as ivy in the air. And that could be both the booth and me. Because whereas at the top, where she's in the moonlight, she creeps down the paths to seek. She's seeking. In this one, she creeps to. Right. So she's past seeking, and it's there.
Yes.
And then, and I love this. I'll just share it. She goes, creep to the doctor's bare booth, and listen to the word bare. It's ethereal. Bare, and cold as ivy in the air, and where. And it's even more ethereal if it's done in a British accent.
Yeah.
Right? Bah, ah, wow, right?
Yeah.
But even in American, right?
Yeah.
And where I stand. And now she's not creeping anymore. She's standing.
Yes.
The brown and ragged light holds something still beyond, hid from my sight. No clear moon anymore. She's seeing almost, it feels like she's seeing from the grave. It's ragged light, it's brown. I don't feel comfortable being too literal about it, but it's also, I kept thinking of your bound. It's murky, right?
Yeah.
It's murky, and something's behind, right? Hid from my sight. Okay, I'm going to stop right there for a minute, because what confuses me, or just like, and I will preface all of this by saying, I don't actually need to know. But if you have any ideas on it, it just fascinates me that Deborah, in my long cloak of brown, like a small nightingale that dances, she's dancing, creeps, dances down the cherried boughs, creep She moves from dancing
To creep.
to creep. And maybe as I'm thinking about it, maybe it's the transition.
Well, I think because the dancing is being done by the nightingale,
Right.
which is the like, right? So it's it almost feels to me like Deborah, her reality is that she's creeping down to the doctor's bare booth.
Right.
But she has a memory or a dream or a fantasy that she's like the nightingale that's dancing down the chariot boughs. So it's interesting, it feels almost as if it's two versions of her
Yes.
at the same time.
Yes.
You know, perhaps it could be a memory of life.
Right.
Because she's just been talking about the young maids and their life in the spring.
Right.
And here, she's no longer that, she's now Deborah.
Right.
But there is still this memory of the small nightingale that's dancing down, like.
Yes.
But the reality juxtaposed right after that is that Deborah, is creeping down to the doctor's bare booth, cold as ivy in the air.
Right.
So it's like you said, it is a transition.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an interesting. It's not just a transition, but it's a juxtaposition.
Yes.
Of like you said, all the beauty of spring just before, and to the realities of the moonlight ghost.
Right.
And the realities of where she is.
Right.
You know, in that brown ragged light, etc.
Right. So they're sort of superimposed.
Yes, it seems, or could be seen that way.
Okay. And now she's...
Because for example, too, you see the repetition of cherried boughs with pluck boughs of cherries earlier.
Right.
Right. So that was like you said, that was the beauty of spring.
Right.
And she's saying to the young maids, pluck these boughs of cherries, which is proactive. She's plucking it. Here, she's still proactive. She's dancing down the cherried boughs, but also the use of cherried here as being the adjective.
Yes.
As opposed to the object.
Right.
Bough of cherries.
By the way, I hadn't thought of it before until today. I was thinking of someone I cherish, and I haven't used that word to describe a feeling I have about someone in the past. And then I read this and I went, oh, cherried and cherished. I just wonder if the word cherished is related at all to the word cherry.
Well, and also what's interesting that could be too, and relates to the creep to the doctor's bare booth, is that cherried boughs also has a potentially different meaning to me, in the sense that bough, as in a branch, as in a piece of wood where she was hung from, and cherried can also have the connotation of blood, or dried blood.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, as opposed to pluck boughs of cherries is more obviously a bough of cherries. But cherried boughs, suddenly it could also be seen as boughs colored or cherried.
Yes.
Which does resemble dried blood, if one were to try to look at it in that sense.
Yes.
Because this, like you say, is that transition. And her being the small, or like the small nightingale that's dancing down this essentially bloody path, so to speak, could be, and then it transitions there to then creeping to the doctor's bare booth. So it's an inversion of earlier.
Possibly. I'm just going to go out on a limb or a bough.
Yes.
And say, I don't think that was active.
No, I don't necessarily think that. I'm just saying it's a possibility. Of reading it.
Yes.
But I think that the inversion though seems intentional.
Right. So let me say it. If I did it differently, I said, I creep I creep to the doctor's bare booth like the small nightingale that dances down the cherried boughs. I know, and just go with me if this is what feels germane to you or meaningful, is that that it is there for transition. Because logically, if you're creeping, you're not dancing.
Right.
And if you're creeping because you're
although,
to the doctors, you're not dancing.
No.
So.
But I think that also, like, it is that transition, because if you creep, and if we're picturing creep in like the kind of tiptoey, almost cartoonish way, it can become its own dance. And so to me, it could be, because she is a moonlight ghost, her creeping is her version of dancing at this stage in her life, or past the point of life.
Okay, but here's the reality to the word creep.
Yes.
We use it, well, there's the negative, what a creep.
Sure.
But we use it, as you say.
Written. Yes.
Right.
That in itself could be her dance.
Okay.
Like the small nightingale. Because because she is the moonlit ghost, and she says earlier on, it is the cold sense quivering my voice, a little nightingale that grieves. So she sees herself as the small nightingale.
Right, and I guess that's where the dissonance comes in, is that here I'm a moonlight ghost.
Yeah.
Right? And she's seeking, but here she's Deborah in the long cloak of brown. So she doesn't have that lightness about her. Right. She's heavy with a long cloak of brown.
Right.
So dancing, comparing herself to the small nightingale dancing.
Yes. To me, that's her spirit, perhaps. Because here, like you said, it's the juxtaposition, too, of body and, if you would, soul or spirit, right? Her body is wrapped in that long cloak of brown, and she physically is seeing through the ragged light, etc., in the earth and whatnot. But her spirit is that small nightingale that's dancing in the little moonlight ghost. And her spirit is who is speaking to the maidens and whatnot. So there seems to be in here the separation of physical body and soul, or spirit. But here is the first time where those two things are juxtaposed.
Right.
Because
in the middle.
Yes, right in the middle of the poem. Because the entire time, it's essentially just the spirit speaking, the voice, the spirit.
Right.
But this is the first time, and it's interesting here that she associates her spirit with an animal, a small animal that is a free bird.
Right.
The nightingale.
Right.
Whereas her body is weighted, like you said, weighted down.
Right.
But also is weighted down by her name.
Right.
And who she was.
Her mortality.
Her mortality was Deborah Churchill.
Right.
But her spirit is not that.
Identity.
Her spirit is the nightingale.
Right. But she doesn't say she is the nightingale. She says like
that's true.
The nightingale
that's true.
That dances down.
But here
at the beginning she does.
Beginning she does refer to her as the little nightingale that grieves. Right. But interestingly here again, it's not her that's the nightingale that grieves, it's her voice.
Yes.
Her voice is the nightingale. So here she's associating, which, if I may, associates to that piece I'm playing with the notion of vowels being the ghosts and animating spirit.
Right.
And here she's doing the same, not the same thing, but it's related to me in the sense of her voice is the animation and the animating spirit. Her body is the so-called dead weight.
Right.
At this point in her existence.
Right.
In the earth.
Again, which puts this question mark over the word dances. As Deborah. It's But she's not dancing.
But she's like the nightingale.
She's like the one who's dancing.
So her, you could say, physical body is creeping to the doctor's bare booth.
Mm-hmm. Well, so did the moonlight ghost creep.
Ah, that's interesting. Yes, that's right. Interesting.
Because essentially the spirit, a ghost, creeps.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But
the nightingale dances.
The nightingale dances.
So that's very interesting because it's interesting because the ghost. So then there's a separation too, a third separation between body and ghost and spirit. Mm-hmm. And spirit is voice, which is the nightingale, the little nightingale. Mm-hmm. The ghost is perhaps in between. Mm-hmm. It's in between the weight of the body and the little nightingale, right, which is the voice. That's quite exciting.
Isn't it great?
It's very exciting.
It's so great. Okay.
And so interesting. So here, there seems to be three realms. There's the realm of the physical body,
right, which
here for the first time we see that the body was named Deborah.
Right.
The body is buried in the earth.
Yes.
And seeing through the ragged brown light, etc. Then there's the realm of the ghost.
Right.
Which here the ghost is creeping down the strawberry path and is seeking something. The ghost is seeking the lost world.
Right.
So the ghost perhaps seems to be in a kind of purgatory.
Well, Deborah is in purgatory too.
Well,
they both are. Yes.
Well, but to me, Deborah. Well, actually, to me, Deborah isn't in purgatory. She's buried in so-called reality.
Yes, she's in reality.
In the earth. Her reality is she's buried in the earth. She can't move. But the ghost is in purgatory, seeking that lost world, the apothecary at the fair.
Right.
In a way, in this poem, it seems that the fair is purgatory. Or can be.
It's possible. When she says she's seeking the lost world, that seeking the lost world feels like it's from a purgatory sort of position. Yeah. That she's trying to find she's trying to get to the apothecary at the fair.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
right?
Okay, yeah.
She's seeking heaven, let's say.
Let's say.
Right,
or some
handle,
other realm.
A handle.
Sure.
Right? A freedom.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
From this.
Whereas her voice is free. Her voice is the little nightingale.
Yes. Her voice is free.
But her voice, and what we're going to get to that shortly, as you said there, or as she said there, planet spotted light fritillaries.
Let's go there. So let's leave this for a moment.
Because I only say that, I only bring that up because her voice seems to be the only thing that's free in the poem. Her voice is the thing with wings.
Yes.
It's the thing that's flying.
It's her agency.
Yes,
right.
Exactly. It's her agency. It's her spirit, her voice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
The voice, to find your voice, to have a voice.
And to have a voice beyond, in this case, beyond death.
Right.
Seeking the freedom.
Right. Right. Right.
Which is perhaps interesting, particularly, and I think there's a reason, apart from just letting us know, but there's a reason that Sitwell opens with the earthly facts, you could say.
Right.
The reality facts.
Details.
Deborah Churchill, born 1670, etc., etc.
Yes.
Because that perhaps is the reality through which the voice, the spirit, the nightingale is seeking freedom from. Because the reality is that she was clearly unjustly, horrifically treated, hung and killed.
She was killed.
And killed.
For no
reason.
No reason.
Just because the man fled. And that happened to be the law, the reality, of the iron bars of that time.
Right.
And she, or her voice, the nightingale, is seeking freedom from that. And because there was no freedom from that in life, her reality now is buried in the earth, but she is still seeking freedom.
Yes, that's something that I've thought of a lot about. Why does she even go to the maidens? Why does she speak to them? And she wants to tell her story. She wants to be seen. She wants to It's like,
Right. Well, and going back to the thing of the fact that the ghost is in purgatory, lines up with here, now time beats not.
Right.
She's literally trapped in a timeless purgatory.
Right.
And dead love is forgotten. The spirit, too, is dead and dank and rotten. But that's interesting.
Isn't it? She says the spirit is dead and dank and rotten.
But see, I think that what's interesting is, again, there's two voices in here.
Yeah.
There's the voice also of Sitwell.
Do you know, it serves me not to think of that. Because she is put, whereas...
No, I'm saying here right now in this phrase, here at the beginning, it's actually her voice.
It's Sitwell's voice?
No,
it's not. Yes,
it's the spirit's voice,
right.
The voice.
Right.
But I'm saying the two voices in the sense, or maybe it's not Sitwell's voice, but there's different voices. Because this is the voice, let me see.
It's the voice of the moonlight ghost.
It's yes, but then comes the voice of Deborah.
Right.
Which is a slightly different voice.
I think it's. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because my voice changed. I figured out, oh no, once she says I'm Deborah, it's a lower voice.
It's a lower voice.
Right? This is
also because she's literally lower.
Exactly.
She's literally in the earth.
Right, and we have clues to that too, because she talks about my dark voice. Right? She's in the earth. Long cloak of brown. So let's keep going.
Let's keep going.
Yeah. So where I stand, brown and ragged light holds something still beyond, hid from my sight. Okay, so that, I think that's fairly self-explanatory.
Yes.
Okay, so here, and this jump, I'm really interested in your idea of how it jumps to this image of God. Once and it's so, it is so gorgeous. Plumaged like the sea. Big, beautiful waves crashing, right? Stunning. His swan, then it's like, oh no, there's no plumage anymore. His swan skin head. It could have said swan head. She could have said swan head.
Yeah.
But that's too pretty.
Yes. Well, but swan skin, I think of the swan skin as having the fur, not fur, whatever you call it, feathers.
Yes.
It's soft, but it's white.
And there's no plumage.
And there's no plumage,
right? It's essentially a bald head that's not actually bald.
Right.
But she uses the word skin that helps us understand a bald head.
Right.
Right? His swan skin head
had wintry white quills.
Wintry white quills. And quills, wintry, first of all, we haven't heard winter. It's all about spring. And the snows are silver.
Yes.
But this is the first time we see winter. They're white.
But the snows, of course, relate to winter.
Of course.
But not literally, yeah.
Well, she just doesn't say it. It's the first time we hear winter.
Yeah.
Now it's wintry white quills, and I love this use of quills because they are feathers.
Yes.
But when we think of a quill, we think of a quill pen.
Right.
It's pointy.
Yes.
It's not at all plumage.
Right.
It's not welcoming.
But the quills are plucked from the head.
Well, his skin had winter. I'm reading this. His swan skin head had wintry white quills.
As in no longer has, is what you're thinking.
No, I'm again, just the way I've been seeing it.
Yeah.
Is that he doesn't have that plush plumage anymore. He has spiky white quills. And a bald head-ish, a baldish head. And so I'm interpreting that, but I'm way open to your interpretation, that it's telling us that God is aged.
Oh, interesting.
Right. It's old. God is old now.
Well, I'm thinking, too, though, that I'm reading it as in because she says once, right?
Yes.
So once Yeah, well, exactly. That is what you're saying. Yeah, exactly. Once it was plumage like the sea. It was frothy and quilly. I'm not quilly, but his swan skin head had wintry white. So I associate the wintry white quills with the plumage like the sea. It's now swan skin head though. It's now no longer plumaged because had wintry white quills. No longer has wintry.
That's exactly what I see. Yeah, that is a passage of time.
Yeah,
he was robust, and now he's not.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But it's a.
And the question now.
But first of all, let me just say, the jump is kind of wild to me.
Yes.
But I'm comfortable with. I mean, honestly, it feels like, did you take something out that was here? I'm not getting the segue to it. But she is overtly telling us this image of God I had, or I'm using here, is one where he gets to age, right? It's
Now, here's a question for you, because I have an interpretation of it. Who is he? I think he is possibly that apothecary at the fair.
He is the apothecary.
Okay.
And yes. And again, I'm finding God to be I'm finding that to be an analogy for God.
Okay.
Because then she implores him. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes.
This person, by the way, plumage like the sea is massive.
Right.
So once, but even so, once plumage like the sea, it didn't have a good hairdo.
Right.
It was as big as the sea. Right. So it's this is a god head, right? And so then she implores, "Hearken to the dead. I was a nightingale. Now I croak like some dark harpy." By the way, loving all the birds, right? The nightingale, the swan, plumage, dark harpy. In night's cloak upon the walls, and I love that she's hung upon the way she was hung on the tree, but she's hung on walls, and it's the first mention of anything like a building.
That's true.
It's the first mention of a barrier, of a block, of an imposition. So I'm just staying there for a moment.
But also may I say, I don't necessarily think the apothecary is God.
Do tell.
Well, because she says hearken to the dead. So she's saying hark to you, as in this huge head, which is the dead.
Hearken means listen. Listen to the dead.
Right.
So she's saying, listen to me, I'm dead.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
Listen to me. That's how I'm understanding it. I was a nightingale. I was pleading my case.
That makes more sense.
Right?
Yeah.
I was a nightingale, but now I croak like some dark harpy hidden in night's cloak upon the walls.
Now, she's not hung upon the walls. She's hidden in night's cloak upon the walls.
Hidden. What did I say? Hung?
No, you said hidden,
yes.
but you mentioned hung. And I'm just saying she didn't say
hidden
that here.
In night's cloak.
Upon the walls.
Upon the walls.
Right. So we don't actually know how she's hidden on the walls. As in, we don't know if she's standing.
Up on the walls. She's upon.
Well, she's upon the wall. She's not necessarily on the wall.
Hidden in night's cloak upon the walls.
In other words, it could be her shadow that's been cast on the walls. Meaning, because I'm picturing like a thing where you get hung. What are those things called? The wooden structure that you get hung from.
Yeah.
Right.
Gallows.
The gallows. Thank you. Which obviously would be on the walls, but your shadow could be on. It's clearly close to a wall. Usually, it's in a square. So in other words, she's not necessarily hung. They don't use unless she could be. She could be hung as in from a wall, because I know people have been hung literally on the wall as opposed to a gallows.
Well, it's very interesting because, and this is why I wanted this with you.
Yes.
Is that I hadn't even thought about the fact that she's talking about the dark harpy, and harpies upon walls, right?
The harpy is crouching on the wall.
Exactly. Perched on a wall upon the wall. Okay.
So she may not be discussing her death or her being hung.
No.
But she is, like you just said there, yes, she was the harpy. She is the harpy, hidden in night's cloak upon the walls. Yes.
Uh-huh. And I know why I was thinking of that, why I had the image of hung, is because you hang a cloak on the wall, right? Hidden in night's cloak, hung upon the walls. So this could go both ways.
But I think of the harpy hidden in night's cloak upon the walls, not necessarily hung more in the sense of what you said of crouching.
Yes.
Right. It's crouching in shadow.
Right, but take harpy out of it and say the knight's cloak hung upon the walls.
The knight's cloak upon the wall. I see the hung. I see where you're taking that.
Implied hung.
The implied hung.
Right.
Yeah, I see.
Anyway.
Yeah, that's a play with the fact that she obviously was hung.
Right.
Right. I see.
Yeah.
I like that. Uh-huh.
By the way, it took a long time to find it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it says among the dead, quick, and you may already know this, but quick is Elizabethan for alive. You find it in Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
So among the dead, I'm alive. And I love that she realizes she doesn't have to use the word I, because am is only associated with I.
Right, am is to be.
Right, we never have to say I. We can always just say am, and we'll know it's I am, right? But
it's interesting, too, the choice, whether conscious or not, of I in this section is related to the voice. As in, I as in nightingale, I croak as in voice.
Right.
Whereas am quick is not to do with voice. Or am alive, it's to do with the whole.
Correct.
You see, so she's using I to do with voice. But also I, Deborah.
Yes.
So I changes in this poem.
Right.
There's I, the body, the physical body of Deborah.
Right.
But also I, the voice, the spirit.
And the ghost.
Right. So there are three I's.
Right. Okay, so she has just said
am quick. Among the dead am quick.
Right. She's alive. That's that purgatory thing again.
Yes. She's alive among the dead.
Right. Not a great place to be alive.
No.
Oh, give me medicine, for the world is sick.
Mm-hmm.
Not medicines, planet spotted, like fritillaries, not for country sins, crimes against humanities, or old stupidities, mistakes that I did ages ago, but plague me, so I'm not asking for absolutions, nor potions you may give a country maid when she is lovesick. She was a country maid. She was lovesick. Right. No. I'm not lovesick. Love is dead. Go to the beginning. What did I say at the beginning?
Yeah.
Dead love. What is it? Dead love. Love dead. Love is dead. Dead
love
love is
love
forgotten.
My life depart.
Second stanza.
Oh.
Dead love is forgotten. So it's forgotten. Done with it. Right. The issue is love. And that's what I love. That at the beginning, the love and lover and life. Love in earth is laid. And then this I just recently recognized is the groan. What does groan do? It's growing.
It's growing. It's
alive. Dead.
Yes.
Right. This beautiful juxtaposition.
Yes. And movement.
Yes. Yeah. And movement. Grown dead. And then not only dead, because dead, something can die for a moment and come back to life. Or be, revitalized.
Dead and rotten.
Once you're rotting, it's over.
Right. Well, unless you're a zombie. I'm kidding.
It's true. It's so true. There's always, right?
But rotten in itself, it's interesting because those three words, dead is the most literally dead weight.
Yeah.
Because
heavy.
groan has movement upwards, above, somewhere. Rotten has also movement.
Yes.
In the opposite direction.
Opposite direction.
But
right.
dead is the pivot between.
It's actually neutral.
Right, exactly.
Right. Just dead.
Yeah.
No movement.
Right.
Okay, so this is very clear, other than the color of the language, of the words,
So I sank me down.
No, I'm just saying that love and earth is laid. It's very
yes.
direct.
Yes,
right.
It's very direct.
So I sank
also because she died for love. Or out of love. Because it was her love for protecting her lover,
right.
as she said earlier, which is why she was killed.
But you know what's interesting? Blinded with terror. Terror. Lest I lose his heart. She's afraid of losing love. She's not in a place of love.
Right.
She's in fear right there.
Yes.
So.
But it's fear because of love.
Yes, she doesn't want to lose the love.
Yes.
Right.
And because of that, in a way, it's what killed her. Well, it's not what killed her, but I mean, it led to that.
Her fear of losing it, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely. Which, by the way, see, look at these juxtapositions, because it, on the one hand, looks like, oh, she's trying to save him.
Right.
But she says, no, not really. I was trying to not lose his heart. Right? It's self-serving, the way that line says. Okay, so love in earth is laid. This is why I come back to that first word, love. My lover, I lost my lover, I lost my life. But the first word is love. Love, I saw it depart. Love. And of course, that's open to all kinds of interpretation. The love between them, the love coming to her from him. But also, it's so definitive. It feels definitive when she just says, love. In all iterations, love. Right? It's not as specific. It's that wide, like the cosmos size, love in earth is laid. And I guess the other part of this, and we're getting to it, is that when she says the world is sick, give me medicine, she doesn't say I am sick. Yes. And at the end, she doesn't say I am sick. In fact, she negates it. It's not I, right? Love, this big love that's around the whole earth, is in the earth, laid dead, grown dead and rotten. Okay, so this is what she has implored. That bit right there is what she's implored to God. And then she's exhausted, in my mind. So I sank me down. And a poor Deborah in my long cloak of brown.
And here it's interesting that it's almost third person. She speaks herself.
Yes.
Of herself.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. It is third person. She's above looking at.
Yes.
So I sank me down. And what I love about so I sank me down is it can be so, because of what I just said, I sank me down. Right? Well, basically, that's that. I'm sorry. That is that. So I sank me down. There's only one thing. But one is, what I found myself wondering about was, she said all of that. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Sorry about this. So can also be, In this way,
mm-hmm.
I sank me down. I implored. I got on my knees.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It can be that. It's
can
reflecting back on it and saying, that is how I implored on my knees. That's, how the iteration of my feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one is, so I resigned and sank me down. Poor Deborah.
In my long cloak of brown.
Right. And that's what I thought was so sad. It's like, oh. It's so fascinating. And like you know it in your mind, it's just how you don't know when the emotion's going to come, how it, you're just reading it. And then all of a sudden something goes, what? Okay. So, do you have a preference for the interpretation of "So I Sank Me Down"?
Well, it's interesting. My original gut feeling was the former, as in not the praying sank me down.
I see.
But the resigned.
Yes.
Sank me down.
Yes.
Especially because love in earth is laid, grown, dead, and rotten. So it feels like she's resigned to that fact.
Yeah, it does. I feel that too. And it's a great line.
Because then here, I'm jumping a little further here.
Yeah.
But though cockerel marches crying of false dawns. I love false dawns.
I do too.
Because there's a struggle here towards hope.
Right.
Dawn as hope, but it's false.
It's false. As a matter of fact, this is right here. This is where it gets hyper bleak.
Well, yes. But I find the hope, like in Beckett, in the continuation of spirit, which is in this line here, shall bury my dark voice, yet it still mourns among the ruins. In other words, it still goes on.
Yeah, it does still go on.
For
definitely.
it is not I, but this old world is sick and soon must die, but yet it still mourns.
Yes.
And to me, the fact that there is still a voice that is going on, it's in a way hope. Because poor Deborah is now gone.
Right.
She's in her long cloak of brown.
Right.
Poor Deborah is gone.
Right.
And there is a cockerel marching, crying of false dawns. She's trying to bury her dark voice. Or she says, I shall, in a way, shall. And yet it mourns among the ruins. So it has the sense that it lives on among the ruins.
It does.
Her spirit, her nightingale voice that longs for this freedom is still roaming, it's still mourning.
It's a dark voice.
It is a dark voice.
Is it a harpy voice? Now I croak like some dark harpy.
But interestingly, here is the first time at the very end here that she's negating the I. So now she's splitting the three I's from the dark voice. For it is not I.
Oh.
Well, no, I'm sorry. No, that's a misreading.
Right.
Because she says, for it is not I, but this world that's sick.
Right.
Sorry, never mind.
Yeah.
But the hope still for me is that it mourns among the ruins. So in other words, energy, if you think of life as energy and then death as being non-energy. Now you could say spirit is the continuation of energy, one might say. And that continuation of energy is still continuing among the ruins. So to me it echoes differently, of course, but it brings me to those last three lines of Beckett. You must go on, I can't go on, I'll go on.
Right.
And in this case, the dark voice goes on.
Right, and it still goes on because she loves this world. She's mourning, and mourning comes from loving. Mm-hmm. She loves the world, and it soon must die, and that going on is that mourning.
Well, and it's among the ruins.
Yes.
So the world must die. That's a beautiful motion of strength.
To mourn.
No, the soon must die. Meaning, she is saying the world is sick and soon must die. It's the sense that this, and the world, I think of it as the system of laws that hung her. That world, that is a sick world. Mm-hmm. And that sick world must die. It must change. But in the meantime, she is carrying on among the ruins of this world.
That's interesting. This old world.
And I think this old world, to think of it again, going back to the opening and why Sitwell included that introduction, the old world, the world has always been male-driven. Mm-hmm. It has always had laws that are very against women, mm-hmm. especially clearly in her case, mm-hmm. in that time.
Right.
So to me, this old world, it's this old system that's corrupt, it's sick, it must die. And so there's two things there. There's the dark voice that continues haunting and among the ruins, mm-hmm. but there's also that last moment of strength for her too. She is proclaiming that this system is corrupt, this system is sick, this system must die.
Okay.
With the exclamation.
Okay. I understand that interpretation. The system must die. The system that hung me incomprehensibly, inconceivably, must die. Mm. Though cockcrow marches, the rooster crows.
The cockcrow marches, crying of false dawns.
Instead of crowing, it's crying.
Well, and that to me relates to the dark voice, in the sense that going back to here, going back to the harpy, mm-hmm. hidden in night's cloak. Mm-hmm. The harpy is dark, it's hidden.
Right.
To me, the dark voice is still hidden. And it's hidden
definitely
because the dawns are false. There is no actual dawn. There is the cockcrow marches crying a false dawn. So there's a crying, and it's interesting that she uses crying. So in other words, it's a signaling that there are dawns, but they're all false, and therefore there is no light. It is still dark. Therefore her dark voice is still kept in darkness, and it still mourns. This too resonates in the sense of, if you think going back to the interpretation of systems mm-hmm. and structures and political structures, this notion that the cockcrow marches on crying of false dawns, there's a sense of there are these various new institutions, new ideas, there's a sense of there being dawn again.
Right.
But it's false. Because the world is sick and must die soon. So there is hope in the word soon.
Okay, so I'm just going to share this just to hear this other way of it, but I resonate with what you said. The cockcrow marches crying, not crowing, crying of false dawns. And, you say day, but it's not a day. It's not a new day.
Yes.
Right? Shall bury my dark voice. So all that noise about the dawns. And by the way, the crows, the roosters might be crowing just normally, but they're actually, it's a false dawn that they're crowing about or crying about. All that noise, all that crying shall bury my dark voice. So no one's going to hear me. Yet, and then yet still is interesting because still, take still for meaning motionless.
Yes.
Yet.
Yes.
Not moving.
Yes.
It mourns among the ruins.
But here's why I don't see that the first part, not the still part, but the first part that way is because of the comma. Though cockcrow marches, comma, crying of false dawns, comma, shall bury. I see shall bury because of that comma. I see it as going back to here, among the dead am quick. She's removing I.
Oh.
So to me, I see it as though cockcrow marches, crying false dawns, I shall bury my voice, but she's removing that I. Because to me, because of the comma, because otherwise it'd be the crying of false dawns is what's burying.
Yes.
But because of the comma, it separates that. So the question is, who or what is burying my dark voice?
Oh, well, I read it as the cockcrow marches.
Oh, I see. Though.
Because.
I see. Even though cockcrow marches shall bury my dark voice.
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
I see. Yet it's Oh, I like that. I see.
Right. So I'm going to be drowned out by the.
And
again,
yet it still mourns among
bird.
the ruins. I see.
Right.
I see.
A rooster.
Yeah.
Yet still it mourns, despite not being heard.
Yes.
It mourns among the ruins.
I like that.
Okay.
I like that. But then the old work is sick and soon must die does still fit in my interpretation.
It does.
Yeah.
It does, and I do see that because.
But I agree with what you just said. The cockcrow marches is what's burying her dark voices.
Yeah.
Yes, that's interesting.
And I have to say the word marches is cryptic.
I like that because then here, for the first time, she's associating her dark voice as being buried in the earth.
Yes.
With Deborah.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Because up until now, the voice has been floating, flying, nightingale, etc.
Right.
But now, the cockcrows, the roosters are marching literally on her.
Right.
In the earth.
And making all this sound, and I think of you saying the high-pitched voice.
Yes,
I love this, right? It travels,
yes,
carries.
Yes.
But the low, dark voice is still, it doesn't carry.
Yes.
Right? It's still...
But yet it mourns among the ruins.
Yes.
So in a sense...
And the reason... what were you going to say?
No, go ahead. Well, I was going to say, if the cockcrow is marching, I think of it almost as stomping on her voice. In the earth.
Yeah.
But it mourns, but among the ruins is beautiful because it suggests that the voice has risen through the earth and is roaming among the ruins. So the voice
It's not roaming. Remember.
No, it's mourning.
It's mourning, but it's not, it's stationary. It's still. It's making sound, but it's not traveling, it's not marching.
But sound is travel though.
Okay.
But I agree in the sense it's not flying around necessarily, but sound is traveling through the air, right? In order to make sound.
And it does say among the ruins.
And so I think permeating the ruins maybe. Right. So but regardless, it's been liberated from the earth.
Yes.
So there is a liberation.
It's still you're absolutely right. It's still active.
Despite being kind of stamped down by the marching.
Despite
of the cockcrow.
being buried,
you could also then playfully you could think of the marching as clearly men marching, the system of men, the world of men. Obviously, men is associated with cocks. so there's I'm sure she probably didn't think that, but the point is there can be a play there.
Sure. She might have thought of it.
She might have thought about that. I don't know. But the cockcrow marches. It does. But even if she didn't think of the cock part, but the marching is very male, militaristic.
Right.
Marching, stamping her voice into the earth.
Right.
Burying her.
Right.
But she is in death liberated and is mourning among the ruins.
I'm not sure I feel liberated.
Well, not liberated in the sense of
but
free.
But she exists.
But she exists.
She exists.
I mean liberated from the earth.
I don't know. She's not out of purgatory.
No, but her body is
body's below.
Yes, but I'm saying the despite the cockcrow marches, despite the system that is marching and stamping out her voice in the earth, it's still more.
That's right. It's still alive.
It's still alive. And to me, ruins is not underground.
No, you're right.
And so I mean liberate in the sense of above ground. Among the ruins. It's hovering.
Yeah. Or
whatever.
Among.
Or among.
That's a word.
Exactly.
Good word.
It's permeating among the ruins, which is above ground.
Right.
And so her voice
is still there.
It's still there.
Despite
that.
For it is not I. And now because.
Yes.
Because the reason it's still there, because it still mourns, right? It's not because, it's not I, right? It's not her.
Yeah.
But this old world is sick and soon must die. And I hear your interpretation. I go up to her where she implores the God, if you will. Give me medicine, for the world is sick. Now, not for country sins. That would be a country sin, right?
The system.
Yeah. Not for old stupidities. Not for love sickness. But because love is dead. This is her heart. She's heartbroken.
Yes.
At the notion that love is dead.
So what is old world for you?
That's what I am here for. because is it her old world? The old world, because coming back to here, the current world she is seeing, assuming that this is literal here, that she's in a world that she loves. That's the disconnection between the system. Of course, the difference here is this is nature, right?
You mean the young maidens?
The maidens and all that. It's nature. It's not system. It's a natural. Whole world.
Yes. I mean, technically that's a system too, but yes, it's not a man-made system.
Correct.
Yes.
And so she loves this. This is what I'm fascinated by. She loves this. I'm just using this one. This page. She loves this page.
Yes.
Right. But she says, love in earth is laid. She's imploring, as Deborah here, she is experiencing the absence of love. Here, as the moonlight ghost, she's way into love. She's really experiencing it. So that's why I thought, well, maybe it's her world as Deborah. And that did take me back to the beginning where she was hung. So when she's imploring.
Yeah.
But then the problem is she's not saying, well, she does at the beginning. She says, this happened to me. I was this and now I croak. I'm stuck in purgatory. I'm not clear why she's stuck in purgatory. Unless, and it's not talked about in any detail other than the story, the fact that he fled. He betrays her.
Yeah, so her story isn't finished, so to speak, because he betrayed her.
Or it's that holding on to that sense of betrayal.
Right.
Is what keeps her in purgatory.
But holding on to that sense of betrayal isn't love, though.
No, it isn't.
Right.
No.
Right.
It's and that may in itself be where the love and earth is laid. I don't feel love. I am feeling this horrible, bitter abandonment from this man that I risked, that I tried to save and ultimately died for. He didn't even stick around. He's gone. Because she said, don't talk to me about the love sickness. It's, my sense of love is gone. My experience of the love of the world. For the
also,
world is
sank me down is also quite literal in a way, because if we're interpreting that whole conversation as with the apothecary, aka the supreme being God, etc., that's perhaps up in the air somewhere. She's now sinking herself back down into the body of Deborah, because the very next line is, poor Deborah in my long cloak of brown. So in a way that, because the whole poem is a soliloquy.
It is.
And we see that because it's framed by the little I'm now forgetting the word there, but the
quotation marks.
thing. Yeah, thank you. And it ends with a quotation and it begins with a quotation. But within that, we are bracketed by double quotations.
Right.
Hearken to the dead, etc., all the way to love in the earth is laid, grown dead and rotten. Then she finishes that and sinks back down sort of into her body. Poor Deborah in long cloak of brown. Anyway, that's not related to the world thing, but I just realized that. That in a way, that this mini soliloquy within the soliloquy, the play within the play, is elevated. It seems to be elevated.
Yes.
And then she's finished with that, now she sinks back down.
Right.
In a way to reality, perhaps.
Right.
Now, within that soliloquy, she says, give me medicine for the world is sick.
Right.
And it's interesting, too, if we're thinking of the sense of height in relation to this mini soliloquy, it's also related to the planets spotted like fertility.
Right.
So there are images of heavens.
Right.
Or whatnot. For country sins and also not medicines. She never says what the medicine is for. She says what it's not for. She says, give me medicine, but not medicines like for country sins, for old stupidities, not medicines for the lovesick. And then ... And then she next says, love in earth is laid, grown dead and rotten. It's interesting because she omits what the medicine's actually for.
Okay, so when I read it, and I thought what she was saying was that the medicine is for the world because it is sick.
Oh no, it's for the no. I agree, it's for the world. But when I say not what it's for, I mean because we don't know which world is the world.
Thank you.
It's for the world. But which world?
Which world?
Because so far in this poem, there are at least three.
Yeah.
Right? There's the physical world that she's sunken now into.
Right.
In her long cloak of brown.
Right.
There's the world of the roaming ghost.
Right.
And then there's the nightingales. And so that goes back to the question of what you were saying is, when she says, fear not, O maidens, another way to see this, which I'm now kind of thinking about, is she's talking to the future. She's talking to future maidens. To fear not her mistake, so to speak.
Okay.
The thing that befell her.
Yeah.
The fate that befell her. She's talking to the future from a place Which is interesting because she's speaking from a place where time beats not. So she's speaking from her purgatory outside time, but to a world where there is time, a world of the future.
Right.
Perhaps.
Perhaps. It's definitely possible.
Perhaps spring then is related to that future, or at least, if not future, a time, because she's speaking from without time.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, because it changes, because now time beats not.
Yes. Love is dead, forgotten.
Such a beautiful phrase.
Spirit too is dead, dank and rotten.
Right.
I forget the moment when I ran. Which is interesting because as she says she forget it, she clearly didn't because she just said it.
Yeah, I love that.
So.
I know. But it also could mean that I typically forget the moment that I ran. I often forget, right? Sometimes I forget.
Well,
I hear you.
Yeah, I think because she says dead love is forgotten, I think that's the big crux of it.
Right.
Is that she's saying all these things are forgotten and dead and rotten.
Right.
But clearly there's a trace of it left in her.
Right.
Somewhere.
And she is compelled to say it, to tell the story.
Yes.
That's where I come into she needs to be heard, she needs to be seen. This happened.
And she's speaking outside time. So it could be that she is speaking outside time to those who are still within time, which is everything that's alive.
Right.
Because to be alive, you exist in time.
Right. And right. She is not in time. She's not alive. She's not in time.
Yes. Yes, and even the title is past. She died for love, the little ghost.
Right.
And the whole poem is a soliloquy of her outside time having died. In fact, she died even before the text begins because she died in the title.
Right. Right.
And again, if we're to think in that sense, it's interesting that between the title and the introduction, we're presented with two versions of her. The little ghost,
right,
who died, but also Deborah Churchill.
Right.
Her corporeal self.
Corporeal. Exactly. Exactly.
Well, this is very exciting. I love this process.
Isn't it fascinating?
Yeah.
That there's so much in it?
Yes. Well, and that to me is, that to me is, that to me is what's so exciting about excavating these texts.
Exactly.
Is that it's the process of excavation that sheds more light.
Right. I want to tell you, I love the fact you said the problem is, what is this world?
And perhaps the world that is sick, and another way to see that, the world is sick because being sick exists in time. Because it implies that there was a time where you weren't sick. And so maybe the world is the world of time, meaning the world that exists, that's alive.
But that world is the one she's loving, right? The second, you
mean the spring?
The spring. And it is spring, so that's current time. It's
that
right
is
now.
Current time, yes.
Right? And she's seeing all these things.
But the young maids that she's saying, fear not, could be the future. Well, not the future, but
okay, but here's the problem.
Yes.
So I'm taking that idea, and that spring is not specific; it's more metaphorical.
Sure.
It's saying it is spring, life. It's all this beautiful, verdant, opulent loveliness, and then it comes to the end, and yet still it's in the ruins. The world is in the ruins. So I'm not really clear what is in the ruins. How did this beautiful world turn into ruins?
Well, that in itself is time. As in once spring, now ruins. Because spring, like winter, is a season that exists in time which must change. But see, I do still think that the Fear Not, O Maidens is not she's not necessarily talking to literal young maids and maidens. I think she's talking to the future.
To future maidens.
Yes. To that despite her, which is why she says, "Forget my fate," at the end of all that. In other words, I think she's saying, despite the fact that this fate befell me,
right,
don't fear this. Like, live.
Exactly right. No, it's exactly right. Stay in this space. Stay in page 2.
Stay in page 2.
Right. And then, but I will say, because she talks about the strawberry paths, and now she's a ghost on the strawberry path, that does place her there in that countryside.
That is true.
And she talks at the end, she says, not for country sins, she talks, or about the country maid, so country, it plays heavily for her.
Yes.
This place, this environment.
Yes. But I suspect that it's all because she is talking from outside time. As she says, now time beats not. Mm-hmm. Which obviously sort of it negates itself, because the fact that she says now implies time, but she's also saying time beats not, and therefore if time beats not, there is no now.
Or it's always now, because
always now.
She's not progressing anywhere.
Yes, that's true. Or always now, and going back to purgatory.
Right.
Purgatory is always now.
Right.
Stuck.
Right.
But, well, I think that purgatory, though, cannot be always now, because now implies the now of now is now past, etc. In other words, nowness moves, which is why we have past and future. So purgatory is without time entirely. To me, now is a denotation of time.
But doesn't this last stanza feel like purgatory in that she's still, she mourns, she's in the ruins?
No, I agree. I'm saying she is completely in purgatory the whole time. And I guess in this case, the now time beats not can be related to her relation to wherever these maidens are. The maidens exist in time, she does not. But she was once a maiden herself. So she's speaking to them from a position of non-time.
Right. But she is in the country.
She is in the country. She seems to be buried in the country, perhaps. Well, we don't know, but perhaps. Or maybe she's buried in the city, but her heart's in the country. Because, like you said, there is a lot of her roaming it.
She's buried in the ruins. Right?
Well, that's true, yeah. And ruins imply civilization, city.
Does, doesn't it?
Hence why I do think the notion of world being city, as in world of man, civilization, is sick.
Right.
As in systems, etc., these man-made structures, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
Right. Among the ruins.
So she sank down back into man-made structures, back into civilization, right? She was up there talking to God, her imploring, maybe not up there, but,
sure. And also the country parts of it seem to exist as a memory. Because the present, at least the present of her body, is sunk down into in the ruins, like you said. Mm-hmm. So it ends with her in her body, in the present, so-called present.
In the ruins
among.
But she's not in the country.
But she's not in the country.
So we don't see the passage of how she went from this beautiful space to the
Which
ruins.
is why I think that is outside time. What I mean by that is, to me, the country episode is both past and future. She clearly has a relationship with country, strawberry fields and whatnot, but she's speaking to maidens of the future.
Right.
But because, like dreams, we can correlate, decorrelate, and deconstruct and reconstruct time. So she's reconstructing her past in the future, outside time for these maidens. But she sinks back into time as in rotting and ruins and the world that is sick, the systems and civilization.
So when I have been my interpretation of the last line,
yes.
Yours is different, and it's interesting to me, is that her feeling was that she's heartbroken that her world there needs to be medicine, going back to, oh, give me medicine, for the world is sick, for the world. Because if it doesn't get it, it soon must die. It's about to die if it doesn't get that medicine.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, it's interesting because I don't see it. I see it as inevitable. The must.
yes.
Because she's not saying, give me medicine so the world won't die.
Right.
She's imploring for medicine, yes, for the world is sick.
But
here she then says, it must die. So I feel like despite the medicines, it will die. It must die.
Yes, I definitely see that.
But the hope is that she's imploring for it nonetheless.
Right, that's the problem. And I have a memory of this, and it may not be accurate, but I have a memory of, in Elizabethan English, the word must can mean something like, it's about to die. And I would have to look that up for sure.
Okay, that's interesting.
But because she implores emphatically for medicine.
Yes, that's true.
Right.
That's true.
And if she doesn't get the medicine, she's not getting the medicine.
No.
And so she's mourning.
Yes.
But this old world, it is not I, but this old world is sick and soon must die. And I also look at that exclamation point.
Yeah. To me, it's a statement, right? It's soon must die. But and here may I jump to another point?
Yeah.
Which is also typical in a way of Sitwell.
Yeah.
And her personal life, in a sense.
Yeah.
Is that this entire story is written in the early 20th century.
Right.
About a case that happened in essentially Elizabethan times.
Right.
And her choice of vocabulary is vaguely, like you said, Elizabethan, too.
And word order.
And weirdly, it speaks to me, and I'm now weaving Sitwell herself into this, where she was as a woman in her time, and what I know she felt, from the world of literary critics that were men, that often criticized her for being as ugly as modern poetry, they said, etc., etc.
Right.
To me, that also brackets this whole poem, in the sense that she herself is standing outside time, and this poem is outside time. She's plucking a case from 400 years ago and reconstituting it now outside of its time.
Right.
But she's using it as a way of proclaiming that the world in 1920, whatever, when she wrote this, or 30 or whatever, is sick and still must die, soon must die, too.
Yes.
So I see her as weaving bits out of time as well. But also I know that she, whether this is true or not, she interwove through her research or the way she saw her family as being descended from the line of Tudors.
Right.
There was apparently a story that her great-great-grandfather was this person that walked on foot down, during that time. So she sees herself as having this lineage to Elizabethan England.
Uh-huh.
And she wrote a great book called The Queens and the Hive, going back to her
bees.
Her bees. And she was using that because the book was a biography about the three queens, Mary Tudor,
mm-hmm.
Elizabeth Tudor,
mm-hmm.
and Mary Queen of Scots
mm-hmm.
at that time, and the hive was England,
uh-huh.
etc. So I'm seeing her choice of motifs
uh-huh.
that she wove in. She herself grew up in the countryside.
Right.
In the hall.
Right.
And her own relation, which you may remember from that interview with her, of how her best friend in her youth was a swan.
Yeah.
Remember? And
it was a peacock.
Excuse me, a peacock. Sorry,
yes.
A peacock. And she used to walk, as she said, as it were arm in arm.
Yeah.
But he had no arms.
Right.
And she said, and he used to give out this great shriek in the morning and jump on her balcony.
Yeah.
And sort of greet her.
Right.
And she said, because then she did not, as she then did in her older age, dislike ugly noises.
Right.
As she pointed out.
Right.
And so all those imageries of birds, that experience from her childhood with the peacock, and the ugly noises of the croaking, etc. To me, I can see that all woven into something, a poem like this.
Yes. I remember that her peacock would protect her, warn her if her mother was coming.
No, that wasn't the peacock. That was her. No, that was her. Her not butler, but somebody like a butler. She said his name was Old Mr. something.
Maybe I'm
not Pemberton, but there's a name for him, and she said something like, even in afterlife, he would come and warn her. Even after he died, he'd come and warn her.
Huh. Interesting. That's fun.
Also, an interesting relation to this discussion right now, that at one point in her life, in her youth, she used to lie in a coffin every morning.
Oh.
Thinking before she would write.
Really?
Yes. At one point, it was rumored that she did this, which is fascinating to me. And I don't know if I should say this with this recording, but I've always wanted to sleep in a coffin. I find it actually soothing.
Yes, because you're
wrapped.
You're wrapped.
You're wrapped. Anyway.
That's right. It is. It's a similar thing.
And I don't know if you've seen those early photographs. You know Cecil Beaton?
Cecil who?
Beaton, the great photographer Cecil Beaton.
I'm going to take this off. It's